How to read to learn Japanese. There's more to reading when your aim is to learn a language, as opposed to just taking in information on the page. Many texts designed for language learning might not even contain information that interests you at all, but are rather just used as means to show how the language is used in a certain context. Understanding the meaning is of course important, but seeing grammar and words as they appear in the wild and internalizing them is a huge part of learning a language. How much you can learn from reading depends on how much information you're able to get out of a text. The more you notice and internalize structures, formulations, and word choices, the faster you will learn. There's a lot more happening in the language than what you learn going through a normal textbook or reading up on grammar. There are many nuances and ways that native speakers communicate that you can't pick up on from just using textbooks or other artificial content made for learners. If you look at a piece of content made for learners of English, you can quickly notice how weird it sounds.
Hi,
What do you have there?
I have some oranges.
May I have one?
Sure. Here. Have more than one.
Gee, thanks.
The way Japanese is used in the real world is what you need to learn.
愛知晴れクソ暑いといったコメントも出てますね。そんなコメント失礼しました。読み上げちゃいましたね。私クソ暑いなんて絶対言わないです。
To do this, you need to build up a database of words and phrases along with the intonation and rhythm of the language. While reading isn't the only way to do this, it's one of the easiest as you can do it whenever you have a few minutes throughout the day. You can always carry reading material with you. If you don't like carrying a book, then just read off your phone. The way I like to read for learning Japanese is as follows. First, make sure to select a text that suits your current level. It should ideally contain some new words or grammar, but not too much. If you're unsure, just go for it and adjust accordingly. You could, for example, shorten it or work on it piece by piece. Then you go through the text and look up the meaning of any new words or grammar you find. Then you create flashcards for your new words. Go through the flashcards throughout the day until you're confident you know the words. While doing this, start to read through the text again and again. This repetition is what helps you internalize the language.
チャンネル登録とグッドボタンよろしくお願いします。
One way to supercharge this is to find a text with an audio version. That way you can listen to it as well, which will make the language easier to remember. The more ways you interact with a piece of content, the easier it will be to internalize. Another way to help you learn the text is to read out loud. You might not always be able to do this if you're reading on the go, but you can get away with this at several times during the day. If you can't read out loud for some reason, you can always mouth the words instead. Everything helps. If you have access to an audio version of the text you're reading, try to sound as close to the native speaker as you can. It can also be a good idea to record yourself once in a while to make sure you're progressing. Chances are, you might not sound as good as you think.
ソセージ。
I'm not sure I understand.
But you'll never know until you hear it for yourself. The key to getting good at reading is to do a lot of it, but there will be times when the text you've prepared just doesn't interest you that much, or you've gotten bored with it. If you're reading material that's a bit above your current level, then preparing new material will require you to sit down with the dictionary. This means that there will be times when you're not feeling your current material, but you also don't have time to prepare something new. When this happens, you can just skip to a text you haven't read in a while, or you can try to read new material without preparing for it first.
大丈夫かな？
You will need to read material you haven't had the chance to prepare for eventually, so doing so once in a while is good practice. The reason for this is that you can't rely on a dictionary to tell you what something means. Instead, you have to use the context and your knowledge of the language to figure out what the meaning is. You might not always get it right, but you will get better with experience. Keeping reading fun is something you should prioritize, as it's much easier to keep going if it's something you really enjoy doing. That's why it's important to read material that you like. It's better to read about things you're interested in, even if it's a bit above your level. If you find it difficult, you can always read a shorter section over and over again, until you feel confident that you know what it means and have internalized the language. Manga is worth mentioning as it's fun to read and contains a lot of conversational language. Since you can get a lot of information visually from manga as well, it can be easier to read, even if you don't know what everything means. This makes manga something you can use to break up monotony once in a while if you're mainly reading heavier texts. And you can also use manga as a supplement if you're taking a Japanese class, for example. If you find a sentence that's difficult or something you deem very useful, write it down and try to memorize it. Extracting useful language from texts you read is a great way to learn from reading. Even if you don't write everything down, you will still absorb a lot from reading. Read as often as you can throughout the day, and you'll be bound to improve fast without it necessarily having to feel like a grind.
ソセージ。
ネバギバ